been looking at our book of real estate for years now. It started before my time, but really we started honing in on the city budget and how much real estate the city has been sitting on once I took over as the finance chair 3 years ago. So we've started looking at that, and that process will continue no matter what happens with City Hall. City Hall has been and still is and will continue to be one of the most expensive assets on the city's book of real estate. It's just a fact. It's a big, expensive building that costs a lot of money to run. It's also a building that a lot of people clearly love and cherish and see as part of our city's landscape. But because of the cost of the building and because of the impact on the budget that has finite resources, and we have a lot of other stuff to pay for, we have a duty to understand the full cost of operating that structure and a duty to be transparent with our taxpayers on the cost of staying versus going. That's the process we've been going through in the last few months and that we are continuing after today. Now, any reasonable person, and I assume you guys are all reasonable, has to acknowledge there is a cost to staying in City Hall. There is a cost to operating that building. Anybody who thinks it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money at all, you're not a serious person. Now, then the question becomes, what is that cost? What's the cost to stay in City Hall? What's the cost to renovate it? What do we need to renovate it? All of the above. If you listen to our experts, once you get past the question of, do you believe it costs anything or not? The next question is, what do you think it costs? The city has engaged in several different experts that have come up with 4 different reports. One of those experts was requested by Councilmember Ridley, and that individual was that group was part of the full package of reports that we have. The experts have provided us with a cost estimate, which we'll talk about tonight, on what it would cost to stay in City Hall, renovate it either quickly or over a longer term period, like 10 years, and what the different phases would look like under each category. And they've also broken down, do we need to replace the whole roof? Do we need to fix the AC units? What does that look like? Anybody in here who has owned a house probably realizes once you fix a toilet, sometimes there's a problem with the pipes behind that. It doesn't always just stop on what's in the surface. And over the last several months, City Council has learned that there are a lot of internal problems with City Hall that we need to be aware of. So I will just put it out there tonight. I do believe the experts. I know there's a lot of questions, and one of the form letter questions that comes to me every day is, don't believe the numbers. I do believe the numbers. I believe AECOM, I believe CBRE, I believe Gresham Smith, these internationally known companies that have dug into the City Hall. So then, with that being said, you know where my position is on the numbers. So then the question is, knowing what the numbers are, I am of the belief that it is going to cost us somewhere in the range of $700 million to fix City Hall. If we finance it, it's going to be more. So then what I don't have is the numbers on what it is going to look like for us to move out. I don't have that comparison. I wanted to delay this meeting until I had that comparison, but we kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Finally, Cynthia and Heritage are like, we got to set this meeting, and I agreed. So we have this meeting without that piece of information. But the information I do have that I believe, and I'm using to make the best judgment I think I can, is that it is going to cost $770 million. I am open and I am willing to be one of the votes that stays in City Hall if we can find a way to pay for it. I do not believe we can kick the can down the road. I do not believe one of my colleagues who says, just put some Band-Aids on it and do some temporary fixes, because I've done renovations myself and I know it costs more than just a Band-Aid fix. So for me, if there is a way to find it in the budget for us to stay in City Hall, I'm open to it. So then the question becomes, and then we're going to open up to questions here in just a couple minutes, how do we pay to fix it? There are several different ways. I'm going to ask our CFO, Jack Ireland, to come on up here. He just walked in. I think he hit some traffic. And this deck, I'm not super familiar with it yet. It just got dropped on us a couple days ago. It's public now if you guys all want to look at it, but there are 3 ways mentioned in here to pay for City Hall. One is a general obligation bond of around $770 million. The second is we pay as you go with cash, and that's using general funds. To make that happen, we have to do cuts in other departments, which we'll talk about. And the third is to do a tax rate increase, which if I did the math correctly, and I have not checked this with staff, for your average $500,000 home that's valued at that, it'd be about $280 extra annually added to your bill. Don't quote me on that. I have not verified that. So that's where it leaves us. At this point, I think that's all I'm going to say here. I want to save as much time as possible for questions. Last thing before I introduce everybody here is CBRE. What is their role? I have heard at other community meetings, people just started yelling at CBRE immediately, thinking they were saying sell City Hall and move out. CBRE's role is not to be an advocate for that. They have been put in that position certainly by a lot of folks. Their role was to be hired by the city to go out and collect numbers for us, look at the market, figure out what the leasing situation looks like, and report back to the city. They are an independent broker who does not have a dog in the fight, from what I understand, on what we choose, but they're here to provide their opinions when asked. We also have, I'm gonna let John and Jack introduce themselves.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm John Johnson. I'm the Chief Real Estate Officer, formerly the Director of Facilities and Real Estate Management.
Good afternoon. I'm Jack Ireland, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Dallas and a resident of the district.
Glad to have all residents, even city staff here. Thank you. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the very capable Emma Ruby. You can have my mic, and I'll play microphone.
Cliff passed along questions that were pre-submitted to me. A lot of them asked the same kinds of main topics, main questions. So a lot of them I've kind of combined into West. What is your personal wish for the future of 1500 Marilla?
Man, well, I think in a perfect scenario, we fix it up and we are able to activate and still let our core of our downtown survive. And we find a way to pay for it. I mean, there's a little bit of a Pollyanna bit in that answer because I don't know how we're going to pay for it yet. I don't want to see our rec centers close. I don't want to see our pools close. We can't afford to fire personnel from all the different departments. I have yet to see the plan to pay for it, but in a perfect scenario, I'd love to see a way for the southern part of downtown to be reactivated with housing and maybe an arena, and it's one day, but something to re-energize downtown with us being able to save the historic building.
How much would it cost if we're looking at relocating City Hall's operations, the emergency operations like 911 Tower, to create easy access offices for taxpayers, / what other sites are being considered for the municipal government?
So again, I think that's for Peter, but there are a few different various buildings that are under exploration at this very moment, and I think that's what the City Council is waiting to receive in future briefings, is to provide them with what the cost would be, what the moving expenses would be, and what the benefit or savings over repairing would be. So that is still forthcoming.
Yeah, to elaborate a little bit more on that, we've been presented in executive session, so closed session, with I think 10 properties, and is that right? 10? 7? There were, okay, I thought there were more originally, but so we honed in on 7 properties in the city, and and without naming any names of what those are, because there's what we don't want to do is put it out there. Oh, council likes this building, and this other building said they take this. It's real estate negotiations, just like you do when you're buying a house, and we have to be able to have some leverage. And so I will tell you that all the properties that we've been presented are in the downtown urban core or touching it right around the urban core. The question I can't answer, and I don't know if Peter can answer here or would answer publicly yet, is the cost of moving it. And that's sort of my frustration with tonight that I can't give you that information because I don't have it either, and that's what we expect to get tomorrow at City Council.
Can the functions of City Hall be relocated to a different site while allowing for the current building to still be protected, saved, potentially repurposed for something such as a convention center hotel?
Sure. So the consultants that previously briefed City Council, Gresham Smith and WM2 Company, put forth two different scenarios. There was the most efficient path, which was between 5 years and 6.4 years for phased renovations. That required at least some portion, I believe, between 130 and 190,000 square feet of leased space, what we would call swing space, so that the departments would move out, their space would be renovated, and it would kind of be this Tetris game back and forth. The council directed us also by resolution to come up with a mandatory 10-year phased plan that allowed for us to renovate the building over 10 years. So depending on which, over a longer period.
But as far as, I think this question is asking specifically, like if City Hall municipal functions were to be moved out of the building, would it still be possible for the city to hold on to the facility and potentially like protect it so that it could then be developed, but like not risk the architecture, I believe is the question?
So I think that decision lies with the city council. It's whatever they choose to do or approve for redevelopment if such is proceeded. It would be whatever the market dictates for that property. If it's to be redeveloped for someone to keep it as is and then refurbish the inside, so be it. Or if there was a different plan, it would be up to what the redevelopment plan was actually for.
And my big concern, like if the dream scenario, to go back to your first question, Emma, if we had a museum that was incredibly well funded that wanted to come in and take on the building and activate it, I think that would be that'd be amazing, right? My concern would be I wouldn't want to move out. We're holding onto that building, then we're paying both a lease to own and the overhead costs of holding onto a building we're not in. And that just makes the situation for the taxpayers worse. I don't want to leave my successor, future councils in the same situation that we've inherited, for the taxpayers. Yes, I'll take that one. And then I would say I'm going to punt it over to Jack to talk about the budget and why there's a timeliness issue with the budget on this, because the city manager is looking to plan her budget for the fall. Why is the question is why is there a sense of urgency, or what's happening tomorrow? I can take that one.
Yes.
So tomorrow there's been a temporary restraining order that have been filed to stop tomorrow's meeting. Well, let me step back. Tomorrow's meeting was called by the mayor and the city manager to be a special called meeting, which would brief us on everything I've talked about up until now, and including the cost of moving out and the lease options. And then it would put it up for a vote, considering four things: moving out of City Hall, relocating, number one. Number two, moving the emergency operations centers out, which has been previously discussed. Number three, repairing City Hall and staying in there in some capacity, most likely. And number four, redevelopment of the whole area in downtown, and like sending staff off to do redevelopment. Those were the items that have been noticed. Three of them have been restrained and cannot be heard for 2 weeks, according to the judge who heard the TRO today. The only item that can be heard tomorrow is the third one, which is the potential repairs to City Hall. So that item, it's going to be up to the mayor and city manager on if we move forward with that tomorrow. We can still have the briefing on everything, but the vote could only be the repair item. The others have to wait up to 2 weeks or more to be heard. So the second part of the question, why? Is there a timeliness issue? I will ask Jack. It's just for budget. That's what I'm getting at, the budget.
So there's several reasons regarding the timeline that we're looking at. One is we are in the process of developing the operating budget for next year. And so we will be presenting that to the city council on August the 11th. And so anything that's going to be in next year's budget, we would be working on over the next month. And so understanding what our cost, whether it's City Hall or a different facility, is important. But also on August the 12th is the deadline for the city council to call an election. If the city council would want to do anything in the way of funding anything through a bond program in November 3rd, there would be an election. Legally, you have to call that election by August the 12th this year. So that's another factor in the timeline. And I think also because Peter and his team have been working with the real estate community, and some of the properties in question may be ready to develop in other ways, and really want us to either make a decision or allow them to move on with what other opportunities they have. So I think it's something that you don't wait on. You give council as much information as you can and allow them to make the informed decision. And I think we're reaching that point.
Jack, do you know if we did a tax rate increase, that would need to go to the voters too, but would it be November, or would that be tied to that as well?
So possibly so Councilmember West asking the question about one of the scenarios we laid out regarding paying for repairs to stay in the building with cash. And so the cash that the city has comes from the tax revenues, property tax, sales tax, et cetera. And so to fund the repairs, it would be almost 7 cents of a tax rate increase. And that is in excess of what the state allows. So at some point there would have to be a tax rate election if the city council were to choose to raise the tax rates that high. Again, we're just talking the math of how the math works. Council has not made a decision yet, one, to stay, and two, if we do stay, would we raise the tax rate? So it's kind of premature to think that, but yes, sir, it would require an election at some point to raise the rate that much.
And really briefly, we're going to have Peter Jansen introduce himself.
Our answer is that there's no plan that's not been presented to council for a demolition at all. So.
And then one more that we had waited on for Peter to get here. How much would it cost to relocate City Hall operations, emergency operations?
I appreciate the question. The premise, though, is not accurate. There's been a lot of discussion and talking points that the city has to go lease space for 20 years to relocate the EOC and the 911 operations, and that's just not factual. What the council directed us to do is to explore all market options, including lease options, to fully vet those and evaluate those. But this operating premise that you have to do a certain type of transaction structure is just not factual. The truth is there are a lot of options on the table for the city, including purchasing other buildings, renovating their own assets, leasing is an option, lease to own, joint ventures are on the table. So there is a host of transaction options that don't lock you into a lease in perpetuity. So I very much understand the sentiment and why you would not want to be a permanent tenant, so to speak, because it's a very specialized use, but that operating premise is just not factual. The city has a lot of options at its disposal.
Okay, so moving on to our questions that have been submitted tonight, there are several that kind of touch on that sentiment of the tear down, demolish City Hall mindset. So do you want to weigh in any further on that aspect of this conversation?
So there's no proposal to tear down, but you're talking about either staying or going?
A lot of the questions are asking about I think there is the belief that there is a plan to tear down, demolish, redevelop. I think that word gets associated with demolitions. So I don't know if you want to speak to that further.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was always out there in the media, and I wish, frankly, the city manager had done a little bit better job vocalizing it, was the Mavericks, and if the Mavericks were going to come to downtown or not. I think that whole discussion was, everybody else was talking about it except for city staff, and that's obviously not happening. They have signed an agreement. Of course, it's non-binding, but they have signed an agreement with Valley View. They've hired, from what I understand, a zoning consultant, and they're moving forward fast pace with Valley View. So as far as I'm aware, there's not another redevelopment proposal on the table. That staff has looked at seriously. That is something I assume we're going to be briefed on tomorrow, if there are any other development opportunities. But the city manager has not represented to me that there's anything she has in mind. And what I've looked at this from the very beginning is a fiscal decision for the city. For me, like I said, it doesn't make sense to be paying for your overhead in one building and be leasing something else. We have got to have a full plan for downtown. If we had some perfect scenario, somebody would have figured it out by now. But the bottom line is it's going to be very expensive to stay in City Hall. If we are going to stay there, I would support it if there is a plan to pay for it that's not going to kick the can down the road. And I do not believe my colleague that is on my side of the horseshoe that is constantly telling me it only costs $10 million, $15 million to fix City Hall. I just don't think that is a serious position to have. The serious position to have is to understand and be transparent about the fact that it's going to cost a lot of money to stay in City Hall. And if it's that important to us to do it, and I think for a lot of people it is, how are we going to pay for it? So that's what I'm looking to do. Thank you.
Do you believe this process of the sale of City Hall has been a transparent one?
It's not a loaded question at all. Yeah.
I think it could have been handled a lot better, especially in the early days. It's been my biggest criticism, frankly, of staff on this. I don't mean to throw these guys under the bus. I think it starts at the top, and Ms. Tolbert's aware of my concerns with this process, because you know who's taking the arrows is the council members who are out there, supporting going through this process. So I think the communication is more so my issue than necessarily transparency, but it all gets tied in together. It's just the communication with the public. Part of it's hard because you've got a lot of this has to happen behind closed doors, and it's part of, we want to make sure we are negotiating the best deal for you, for me, for the taxpayers that we can. But there is other ways to communicate better, by working with media, by holding public forums, and I think we could have done better on that.
Are you planning on tearing down the downtown library, even if City Hall stays? Would we get a new central library, or is Dallas joining the effort to reduce the number of people reading?
I don't think there's a proposal. I'm going to ask these guys to make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't think there's any proposal to do anything with the library other than keep the central library operational. I have said in this very room right here that I don't support closing any libraries. That then becomes part of our budgetary challenges, which we haven't touched on too much yet. But I grew up in libraries. My very poor town of 8,000 people was able to support a library. Somehow we found the money for it, and it was where I spent many an afternoon as a kid. So if they could do it, we've got to be able to do it here in Dallas.
Okay, again, I'm going to combine two because they are pretty much saying the same thing. The sentiment is that there's a vote tomorrow and some of the information is still unclear. Do you believe that that's a prudent strategy to call a vote for tomorrow when there's still questions? And with the lack of transparency and chaos, how can you be trusted?
Testing. It's a good question. The answer I just gave, though, is that the only discussion item that's set for tomorrow is the repair item. So that's the only one that's set for discussion. I think it benefits us from having the public briefing and having that repair discussion tomorrow. And whether we vote on it or not, I think all the information on the repairs is out there. Now, on the other stuff that we're not able to vote on tomorrow, I don't think that's relevant at this point because it can't be voted on. But the repair item, there's been a lot of information on that, and we're going to have probably 12, 14 hours of discussions if you've watched any city council meetings to be able to hash out everything in the repairs.
What are you doing to quantify support or opposition from the public when it comes to staying or moving out of City Hall? And what would you guess that those percentages look like? what are you doing to quantify the public's support or opposition to staying or leaving City Hall?
Chad, that's your question.
That's my question.
Yes. I'm asking it.
Oh, okay. I'll happily take that. I didn't know if there was some statistical way of doing that. I mean, the public feedback has been pretty overwhelming with a sentiment of staying in City Hall and figuring out a way to fix it. What I have not heard is the plan on how to pay for it. And now that we are starting to get the information on how to pay for it, I think some opinions might change. They might not. But as more information comes out, I can see votes kind of moving around on that. In terms of how to quantify that,
Emails, what? I mean, you're taking phone calls, emails, you're keeping tabs?
we read every email, and those of you guys who've written to me who are District 1 residents, you know I respond. Sometimes they're short, like received, thank you, because I'm getting hundreds a day. Ashley gets the phone calls and lets me know if I need to respond to them. But in terms of like we have 50 that are like this, 51 that say move out if the Mavericks come, I don't have that exact number. The general sentiment is that I know that we get more emails against than we do for in the current state.
Are you
So thank
curious
you.
about what the feeling is in this room? And I am.
I'm going to ask that question here in a little bit. Yeah.
Right? Cool.
I thought this was supposed to be a question and answer on paper, not a debate.
It is. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get back to it. How have First Amendment concerns been considered regarding protest space if City Hall moves? City Hall Plaza is used for quite a few protests.
I'll just address that from a directive from staff and council to the real estate team in terms of exploring market options. Speak up or stand up? Oh, sure. So when we go to market to look for various opportunities, our client obviously has to direct us what to look for. And so public space, plaza space, opportunities for city council chambers, either integrated into an asset or developed separately, has been things we've been exploring and asking the market to produce. So I can tell you that the market has been very thoughtful in their responses to address public spaces, access to parks, integrating into accessible parks to various assets, as well as how to design a custom council chambers into an asset. So it's going to be a robust debate, I would imagine, of whether those solutions are acceptable, but that's what council and staff directed us to explore, and that's what we've done. And I think it'd be up to you all to decide whether you like the solutions or not, but that has been a request made to the market.
Okay, Councilmember West, have you, in your tenure, voted against maintenance of City Hall at any time? And if so, when was that and why did you vote against it?
Great question, and this is one I should have researched before I came here. There was a vote in the last bond. Jack may have to check my math on this. It was in the last bond for putting some repairs into City Hall. Actually, you would know this. This was your item, and it was fixing like generators, right, and AC. And I think we ended up taking part of the money. There was a amendment by Tanell Atkins, I believe, to take money out of it and leave enough in there for generators, but take the rest out of the repairs and put them into council districts for specific projects. And I did support that. That was those funds that we used, which I think went to $5 million per council district. Am I right on that? It was a council district allocations. Those went to funding some of our parks, and it ended up being the funding we needed to close the deal on the Sprouts, to make the Sprouts happen on Fort Worth Avenue in Hampton. So the money was ended up being reallocated just like every other council district did. And I think looking back, that would have been a small dip in the bucket. I'm not saying it was the right thing to do. I felt like it was at the time. Looking back, knowing that it wouldn't have hardly done anything to repair City Hall, given the overwhelming cost, I still think it was a good move. Other than that, I think the other votes to not fund City Hall repairs have happened in councils far in the past, and there has not been, well, correct me, has there been any funding allocated towards City Hall in prior councils that you're aware of? I think there were some small allocations in 2007, maybe?
Yes, there has been some previous investments in the building for modernizations of the elevators, some fire suppression systems, and some other minor systems, but I'm not aware of any very, very large ticket items other than the boilers that we've debated previously that were completed already.
Yeah, and I believe some of the repair issues, I mean, from the day it was open, there were some problems with leaking and things of that nature. It has been when we have the limited pot of the bond that we vote on every 5-6 years, and we need money for libraries, for streets, for public safety facilities, for roads, those kinds of things, that ends up winning out over the city assets. The critical facilities always end up suffering, and for City Hall, there has never been an advocacy group like there has been for the Meyerson, or different types of arts groups that Fair Park Music Hall, which do win out on funding in the bonds. So it has been a systemic problem for 40-something years of lack of funding in the building that's caused it to get to the state it is today. By continuing, this is where I get back to my point, we've got to start investing now, or it's just going to get worse. And in 10 more years, you're going to be looking at another council member here who is going to tell you it's 1.5 billion, or I have no idea. But we've got to fix it now if we're going to fix it. Thank you.
Do you feel the building is
So I would like to be clear that we've had no report that comes back that says the building is structurally unsound. The building is safe. The superstructure itself. However, all of the major, not all, but the majority of which of all the major building systems are either at their useful life or aged out past it. So yes, the building is safe. We do have regular entrapments in the elevators. We do have leaks. We do occasionally have mold, but we abate these and we clear them as quickly as possible because we do focus on safety, not just for the employees, but for residents and for visitors that are in the building every day.
okay? Sorry in advance if I can't get this last word, but we have $3.1 billion invested in the new convention center. With that energizing downtown, do you feel the city, do you feel that the city hall space would be attractive to developers for associated uses?
The market's a dynamic living thing, and what I say right now could be completely irrelevant in 24 months. The fact of the matter is that the capital markets drive the majority of investment decisions unless you're a user like the Mavs or the Stars, and you can create your own market. So with interest rates are what they are, which we all feel when you're looking at refining a mortgage or something like that, that disproportionately affects development costs. So it's not as linear or sequential to say just because we made the convention center investment that suddenly everything else around it is more valuable to the market, because costs are what they are for developers. Return on capital requirements are what they are, and we don't control any of those things. In 10 years, in 15 years, the market could look entirely differently, but a standalone, call it development activity, has never generated significant activity around it. The building's been there a very, very long time, and you don't see it surrounded by hotels. You see a lot of buildings have been given back, have been tried to repurpose, but there's not a lot of activity around City Hall right now. That could change, but I would think in the context of just going through probably the best development market in history, for multifamily in particular, that those assets would have been developed at that time if there were a market to be in and around City Hall. So it's a tough question, it's a fair question, but my personal opinion is there's not a standalone market for City Hall as an office building or repurposing it to apartments or something like that. So I don't think those are viable options.
What budget cuts would be necessary
So it's a really difficult question. It's a question that council would have to, I'm sure, struggle with. We did lay out in the presentation, looking at the timeline that the repair program, the 10-year repair program was laid out. And in one specific year, the cost would be $152 million. So based on their 10-year schedule. So to generate that kind of money, that's where we talked about nearly a 7-cent increase in the tax rate, or $152 million pays for 2,200 city employees. And so that is about 4 out of every 10 non-uniform employees in the general fund. So cut 4 out of 10 librarians, 4 out of 10 park and recreation center staff. That's just the magnitude of it. I'm not suggesting that we would do that. I just simply did a math exercise. It would take about 2,200 positions to be cut. We also looked at what it would take to cut all of the non-police and non-fire departments. We would have to cut everything by about 20% to generate a savings of $152 million. All of these are horrible things to think about. I don't even like to think about them or talk about them, but it would be very difficult to come up with a scenario where we could cut $152 million, or where we could do a combination of $152 million worth of cuts and property tax increase. It would completely change the revenue and expense side of the city. So it's pretty significant, and if we get to that point, then we would make recommendations for council. But I know we've really struggled over conversations about reimagining our library system with regional models and impacting 4 libraries across the city. That is a small amount of what it would come to if we were try to fund the repair program with cash.
Okay, this one's for Councilmember West. Did you agree with the council members who restraining order to delay the vote yesterday? And do you think you would have been prepared to make an informed decision tomorrow had that not been stopped?
No, I don't agree with them. I think it was just shenanigans by some council. They filed the TRO based on notice. They knew exactly what we were talking about. So I think it was just political shenanigans. And 2, do I think I would have been ready? Now that's a better question. I don't know, because I don't know what was going to be coming out of the executive session briefing, if it will still happen. I think it would have been pretty telling. I think we would have been there all night, and by 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we would probably have a pretty good idea where we needed to be. Do I know for sure if I would have been ready to vote? No.
Okay, respectfully, how do you rationalize relocating Dallas staff from a building that is fully owned by the city? Basically, the building could last 250 years. How can that be equated for the amount of lease expenditure? How would that be fiscally responsible?
Well, I made this comment earlier about the EOC. The idea that you have to lease in perpetuity is just not factual. So council has not heard the results of all of the market findings and exploration results that they directed us to do. That's something we're supposed to present tomorrow. I wish I could share all of the raw data with you all, but the idea that you have to lease in perpetuity is just not factual. That's not on the table. It is options, but it's not. It's what council directed us to collect. So we did that per the directives of multiple action items and resolutions in the past 6 months. But that's not the only option on the table. And that's what council will be considering, of course, when we're able to present to them. The second piece of that is, yes, the building could last a very, very long time, but at what cost? And I think that's really the driver of this, is just at what cost. So I think if I were a voting member of council, I would want to know, can we save money by leaving, or are we resolved and resigned to our fate here at City Hall? In which case, you have to figure out a plan to pay for it. But the real question is, can we save money by leaving, and is it even remotely satisfactory to the citizens as a potential alternative? So the debate is going to go on until all that information can be presented clearly and publicly. And we're a little bit constrained right now by process because we have to present confidentially on the data from the market. We can't share that with everybody, but I've said this publicly multiple times. It's in the deck tomorrow. The findings are material, and I don't think we're here to define materiality as like $500. Material savings in Jack's world, when he's managing a multi-billion-dollar budget, means it has a material impact on his ability to execute the city's plan. So I think that word and word choice is very important for the public debate.
Does Dallas have any other properties that could be sold to help pay for the city hall repairs?
I mean, yeah, this is what we've really been pushing for to shore up the budget. This is what when I hear that the city's got 50,000 acres of real estate. Yes, some of that's parks, some of that's other things we'd never get rid of. There's thousands of buildings, 1,200 buildings in the city, a lot of which I don't think until very recently anyone's taken a deep dive on. And those are going to be very much looked at least that's what council's directing. I certainly believe staff has heard us as we move forward with this process. Now, is it going to shore up City Hall? I mean, I'm going to tee it over to John on that. I think at this point we've got to look at every property as a standalone because we've got budget constraints moving forward into the future.
Yeah, so when it comes to structures, now we're including buildings, sheds, restroom pavilions, things like that at parks. The city has around 1,600, but of those, 450 or so are actually under the care of facilities and real estate. So those are the things that we're actually maintaining actively or trying our best to do. So as the council member mentioned, the city council recently in the most recent budget funded a strategic real estate master plan. So we have a consultant on board to develop the specifications to help us go through and classify all of the city's properties, to take a look and to see what we actually could monetize, what we don't need. Perhaps there's something in the portfolio that we could shift some people to and clear up another building so that we could monetize it. But that is something that we're actively looking at and that we will be presenting back to the city council once that's awarded. And then whatever proceeds we have from that typically go to the general cash reserve, which then in turn pays for maintenance and repair of other city facilities.
Okay, great. I think this one was kind of answered at the beginning, but I know we've had a lot of people enter since, so I'm just going to reiterate. If the decision is made to renovate or repair City Hall, what has it been determined to be the actual cost to repair the building up to code with electrical, HVAC, plumbing, ADA, etc.? Are there additional considerations given to the rise of construction?
And phased renovation plans. I think the short answer to the question is that the look has been very comprehensive and does capture things like inflation, does capture things like rising construction costs, and puts a pretty good lens on what modern development costs right now. You see a lot of towers going up in Uptown. You see a lot of new buildings going up all over town. Dallas is very fortunate with the greater DFW. It's very fortunate with the amount of activity happening. So there's very good comps. Our team at CBRE, the WM team, other consultants have very good information because we're working all over the city on various projects. So these are not numbers devised in a back room on a whiteboard, finger in the sky. It's been very robust. I think our team, Noreen and Kelly and I, and the 12 others on the CBRE team, I think we spent almost 1,800 hours between Christmas and March working on the project. So I think we exhausted every single avenue in terms of raw data. More broadly, though, the costs, there's a lot of different plans that you could come up with. The teams came up with, I think, very reasonable approaches to the phasing. There could be endless debate about the necessity of certain items, but when you have 70, 80 people working thousands of hours on it, I think a lot of those things have been very heavily debated internally before they're presented for policy action and informal presentations. We put our names and brands and stamps on these things, so it's kind of important to us to get it right. We readily admit it's not going to land with everybody, but the team has been very, very thorough in all the analysis related to costs. I hope that answers at least the spirit of the question.
Sorry, do we have an estimate of cost or?
Oh, yeah, the estimates are very public. There's a range of them. There's 6 different scenarios that are public, and they're $1.1 to $1.6 billion for the 20-year occupancy cost. It's not the raw construction costs. The raw construction costs range from $300 up to $600 million, but the cost of debt is the cost of debt. Operating City Hall as is costs $250 million for the next 20 years. Those are just the raw operating costs for what you all spend every single year to keep the lights on right now. So in all those scenarios, staying is automatically a $250 million decision if you do nothing else. That's just the regular operating cost of the facility. But yeah, the numbers are very public, and they are what they are.
Okay, another one that I'm just going to combine too, because they pretty much ask the same thing. We overwhelmingly voted and approved a $6.2 billion school bond. Do you not think that the taxpayers would approve $700 million for City Hall? And then could you speak to the option of a capital bond program, and would that require calling a special election?
Yes, one of the options that is in the deck for tomorrow's conversation is issuing bonds through a general obligation bond election to repair 1500 Marilla. And it would require a special election. Council would need to call the election in August. The election could be in November. Funds could be used. Without raising property tax to pay for additional debt, we would need to absorb it within our existing capacity to borrow funds. So we have limited amount of capacity to borrow money with the current tax rate. And so if we didn't change the tax rate, that could impact the delivery of the 2024 bond program, delaying that bond program so that instead we would work on City Hall. It would also impact a potential 2029 bond program. We would reduce our ability to have that bond program at the same amount. If we're spending $769 million now on a City Hall, then it does affect our other borrowing capacity.
And that, I'm really glad whoever asked that question did it, because that is one of the things we're going to struggle with as a council on how to pay for this. We've got, if we're going to impact the 2024 bond capacity, that can impact rolling out projects like the Martin Weiss Recreation Center renovation, the Sylvan, Colorado roundabout proposal that we're doing. All of the successful bond wins that we had in District 1, as well as other parts of the city, that could be impacted on it being rolling out. And then other fixes that you guys have been asking for North Oak Cliff Library, things like that for the future could be impacted as well. So it is I don't personally like the idea of using a bond, at least not in its entirety, for City Hall. I think for me, it would be some kind of combination. And I think if we're being serious, we're really talking about a tax rate increase to pay for it, just because I just can't see it getting done with more budget cuts or a bond.
Can you speak to the back-end activation effects to downtown that activating the City Hall space would bring?
Well, there's so many different ways to answer that. If it was a clean, clear site, there was nothing there, and somebody was developing it today, if you're looking at it from the city perspective, any development is accretive to sales tax or property taxes because it's not on the property tax roll, and you're not earning any sales tax at City Hall right now. So it could certainly be activated from a financial standpoint. I think the other way to approach that question is, will activation automatically happen just because the city leaves, or can it happen if the city stays? And I think I'll just point back to my answer earlier. If the market wanted to develop around City Hall, it's had a 50-year window to do so, and it hasn't happened. So what does that say? Developers don't like the area. They don't like City Hall as an economic engine. They can't get it approved by their bank. They decided they didn't want to pay for the development in cash. It was too risky. There's the whole host of reasons why developers, investors, architects, engineers would say no to a project, but they've had a 50-year window to do something and it hasn't happened. The sites have been sitting vacant there a long time. So can activation happen? Yes. I think the 50-year answer says City Hall is not the economic engine to drive development activity around it. Maybe that's not the right answer, though, because some people believe that the premise is it shouldn't be activated around it. That's fine. That's an opinion, too. But the investors have made their voice very clear that they don't want to invest around there, or they're waiting for something better. And other folks might say, great, we'd like it just the way it is. That's totally fine, too. There's different opinions on it, but from an activation standpoint, activation requires money, and nobody stepped up with the money for a long time. So,
If 500 to 600 million was to be put into repairing City Hall, what would that do to revitalize that area or potentially spur economic development? To your point, do you see that as potential?
I think the same answer applies.
We need to fully fund maintenance in our parks. If you guys have spent much time in our parks in Dallas, they are beautiful, but they could be maintained better. I'd love to chip away at the balance of the pension to cut down on that for the police and fire pension over time. Thanks to city staff and folks who worked on the pension, we've come a long way on that, but I'd love to see chunks of money put into that so that our long-term obligation to our men and women in blue and red are shored up. I think those are the two lowest hanging fruit for me.
Has the city looked into any grant funding, maybe from the state or federal government, that could assist with building repairs?
I'll answer what I know about the applicability of these items accordingly. Could be applicable if the asset is an income-producing asset. That's my understanding of the nuance behind it. So tax credits could be available, but that would force you into some sort of real estate transaction where City Hall becomes an income-producing asset. And then state tax credits, historic tax credits, could be applicable, but there's some strings attached to those as well. So I wouldn't look at it as there's buckets of money out there that are just waiting to be grabbed. They all require a great deal of nuance and have some execution requirements as well. So I can tell you from the market exploration side, there are buildings in CBD and adjacent CBD. That's the Central Business District. I'll try not to use any jargon best I can, but there are buildings that are eligible right now for historic tax credits that could offset any relocation, and that is something that we are factoring into all of our economic modeling related to stay or go, so the council can make an informed decision.
And additionally, the city does routinely look at grants that are available for facility improvements, specifically at City Hall.
Core look like with a new City Hall, other opportunities for thriving economic engine? Is there a particular city that you point to that's doing this well, or vision you have?
I'm going to in a second ask staff to just give some general overview of the concepts that came in. Can we not talk about that? You guys didn't see that? Did you see that, Peter? Okay, just some of the ideas that came in. Council has not seen them yet, other than we had heard that there was, the Mavericks, and then we've seen what the public's seen. But if you guys, most of you, I'm sure, have traveled around, like you've seen a lot of downtowns that are truly walkable, that have things going on where people want to live there. I think our downtown needs to have a lot more housing. I'd love to see us increase it from 15,000 to 30, 40, 50,000 people in the next 10 years. And I think with that will come jobs, will come the corporations wanting to consider moving back down to downtown instead of up to Plano, because it's actually cool to be in downtown. I mean, we have some beautiful buildings down there. We have Main Street, which is a gorgeous street when you walk on it. But if you walk any night along City Hall in that corridor, it is completely dead. And it's a little scary in parts of it too. On the weekends, my kids and I will bike over and we'll go to the farmer's market, and it is no man's land from convention center to until you get to the farmer's market when it suddenly comes to life. We've got to do better about connecting our core down there and activating it. I'll ask Peter if you want to talk about just some of the high-level concepts that came in.
If I recall correctly, and I'm least read into this, but I think there were 400 different responses to the open call for offers, and I tried to read the majority of them. A lot of them are very simple answers, more expressing a sentiment or a feeling about the issue one way or the other than concrete plans. That was a not serious call for offers, in my opinion, as a practitioner in the market. And those responses are not indicative of the world of development and the possibilities. Council can neither really officially direct staff to go and solicit the market unless there's a resolution to go and solicit the market, and that was just a expression of interest. There was a couple teams that put a little thought into it, but it was generally, in my opinion, that was one I liked. But that's a design proposal. That's not I'm going to invest dollars in this proposal. So it's a wonderful vision. I thought it was extremely thoughtful. But unfortunately, the vision is not supported by market realities right now. And that was probably a $6 to $8 billion plan. And you can plan all you want, and you can pay architects a lot of money to design and design and design. But unless you have a funder who's going to actually write the check and get the project started and or buy all the...
Why can't we take care of our stuff?
It all comes down to priorities, and as I mentioned at the beginning, if we are going to take care of it, we have a building that's a brutalist building, as you guys know who are architecture fans, similar to, I believe, the Boston City Hall. Am I right? And how much is the Boston City Hall, I believe, spending like $94 million to replace part of their HVAC on their plaza? Okay, so it's for people who have come to me and said, I don't believe the numbers. I mean, you can look at our sister city hall in Boston, and you know it costs a lot of money. So if we are going to invest that kind of money, there's going to be trade-offs. I can't speak for councils from 40 years ago. I can only speak for where we're at today. And today we're at a point we've got to make the hard decisions. So I'm, like I told you guys at the very beginning of this meeting, I'm willing to vote for it and support staying there, but we got to figure out how to pay for it. We have to. And these questions that are coming in are great because it's kind of giving us a preview, I think, of what's going to come tomorrow if we have the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Again, combining a couple here.
Talk to our DPD officers in the back. The more people you have walking around, the less likely criminals are to do something because somebody's going to see them and spot them. And we need more eyes downtown. We need more people living and working down there, and losing corporations is not a good thing. So we had some council members who were supportive of selecting a potential city hall site outside of the central business district, and that to me was a hard no to even consider, because it's like if we do move, and that's a big if we move, in my mind we need to stay in the central business district so we can activate that area. And actually, I mean, the whole problem with the part where City Hall is at right now is there's nothing around it. There's no activation. We don't want to go to a place just because it's active already. Like, we need to help be the catalyst to bring the bodies in there,
I'll just answer it on a advisory level with other clients. You all are probably familiar with Commissioner Garcia's precinct building here in Oak Cliff. I worked on that project, and her directive and the county's directive in terms of site selection is a lot of what the city council and staff have directed us to include in any criteria for a potential relocation. And what we know about City Hall is there's no DART rail line there. It's pretty limited bus access. You're a solid 15-minute walk back and forth over to Main Street. So as an employer, it's a pretty suboptimal environment. You don't have great transit options. You have to walk a long way to get to a lunch spot. You chew up most of your lunch hour getting to and fro and waiting for your sandwich. And then at the end of the day, there's nothing to do. So you automatically leave. So if, as an employer, when AT&T was deciding where to go, when Goldman Sachs was coming to town, when some of these large employers are coming to town and looking at the criteria of where they want to be, they're looking at from an attraction, a retention, and employee basis. How do we keep our best people here? You have to provide an environment that works for them and makes you compete as an employer. So just on that lens alone, as a real estate advisor, we would say your corporate HQ is pretty suboptimal for how you're working with employees and what they can do on site every day. So in anything that we've been looking at, one of the primary directives is, what are the amenities around here? Is this going to help us retain and attract talent? Is this going to help us in our day-to-day relationships? Are we going to be able to keep sales tax dollars downtown? But right now, you drive into work and you leave immediately. There's nowhere else for you to go. And we hear that pretty frequently in our polling of staff at City Hall, how suboptimal it is as an employee from just normal amenities that most of us have in our day jobs.
What is the experience of those who are working in the building on a daily basis? Are they happy with the space and its current functionality, or is it suboptimal?
It's unequivocally suboptimal.
I would agree, and as someone who's worked in the building on and off for 18 years, I took my jacket off before I came here because it's freezing cold all the time. The restrooms are very dated. The concrete brutalist architecture style makes it very difficult for us to make renovations to it. And so I often hear employees lament about their experience just in the building. The payroll office has to be moved every single time there's a heavy rain because water comes down from the water infiltration. It's just not a great environment right now.
I'll just give you all a little bit behind closed doors. Last week in executive session, of course, we had probably 30 people in the room behind City Council chambers. And I think the temperature in there was 87 degrees. The AC is set to 70 or 72, but that type of working environment where you can't control just airflow when you have a large gathering of people is pretty challenging. So we're all sitting there sweating through our clothes for 2 hours trying to have a conversation where we're all doing this all the time. So it's not a great functional building at this point.
No wonder everyone comes out of there grumpy. Again, I think we kind of touched on this at the beginning, but it's good to hear. Jack, how much sales tax could cover the necessary costs? Could there be a combination of sales and property tax to help fund repairs?
Well, unfortunately, we cannot increase our sales tax. Sales tax is set by the state of Texas, so 1% on your sales tax, it's 8.25%. 6.25% goes to the state, 1% to DART, and 1% to the city, and it would take state law to change that.
Okay, we're starting to get to a lot of repeats. Councilmember West, how do you plan to vote either to tear down City Hall or to renovate it?
So there's no proposal on the table to tear down City Hall, just like there's not a proposal to demolish City Hall. As I mentioned earlier, my vote is based on the fiscal responsibility in this situation. I'm not there yet. I will tell you what I've said a few times now. If we can get to a point we can pay for it, I'm willing to vote to stay in it. That's where I'm at.
Is the city able to sell the AAC?
We have some uninformed speculation here. I'm sure with a council resolution, review of the legal contract, when the lease expires, and through a public process, I'm sure that the city has some control over that, but I don't think any of us have the exact details.
Okay, well, we'll dig into that one.
So leases go through 2031, I think, for the teams. So it would be at that time.
Okay. Has the city thought about hiring a creative developer to help with this project, such as Monty Anderson, who did the Belmont Hotel?
So I think the question goes to item 4 that's on the agenda is if the city has not voted to give the city manager direction to go out and actually start redeveloping the site. That has not happened yet. If that vote, which and it can't happen tomorrow because there's the restraining order from it preventing it from happening, but if that vote does happen, I will ask Peter to explain what that process would look like, high level.
So the item, as I read it on the agenda for tomorrow, was to potentially give the city manager authority to negotiate and execute a pre-development agreement, and that's really jargon for just a preliminary agreement to do due diligence on various assets. So the way we've been thinking about it is that for council to make a final decision and a final vote to transact anywhere, if there's going to be a relocation, you need to have sufficient authority to explore those options in a very technical way, much like the city has done its due diligence on City Hall. So we've been advocating for an apples to apples methodology to fully vet any relocation options, in addition to the work that's already been done and already been submitted to us. So the process would be you sign your first agreement, kind of like the Stars did last night, a non-binding letter of intent, or an agreement to explore a project for a certain duration of time, and then you'd move into final transaction agreements. But the directive given to us has been to ensure that there is talent on the other side, qualified and capable of executing whatever strategy the city determines is in its best interest. So we know Monty, we love Monty, and yes, creative developers and counterparties are on the table so that the city avoids any pitfalls in this transaction or transactions. So the idea is make sure you have world-class partner on the other side and that it's executed in a very clean, clear way that everybody can understand, and that transfers risk to the counterparty so it's not on the city to be on the hook for schedule, budget, and other things that seem to have happened in the past. So very clear directive to ensure that the risk is on the counterparty to execute whatever happens going forward.
And Peter, you mentioned the deal that Plano made last night with the Stars. Does Dallas have the kind of funding to be making those kinds of deals and enticing that kind of development? I don't know if that's a you question, but
Besides the cash in the city council chambers, the buckets of cash that's sitting there, I don't know. I'm not really read into the total budget. You directed the question to me. I think it's very interesting the level of competition that's happening nationally for sports teams. It's a bit of an arms race, so to speak. Those are very clear economic drivers, and those entities are making municipalities and counties and states compete very aggressively for their business. That is a huge amount of money. It's a long-term agreement, much like our numbers are 20-year numbers. That $700 million, I believe, is a 30-year TIF agreement or 40-year TIF agreement. So it's a very long-term agreement. It's not a check or a bundle of cash right now, but it's a huge amount of money any which way you look at it.
Okay, and I think this one's for you as well. What is your opinion on the white paper published by the 10 presidents of AIA Dallas that's puts renovations at City Hall at $100 million?
Those are very competent individuals, and their words have great weight. And I think the consultant teams, at least in my experience, I can't speak for the latter team. I was not as directly involved in that, but I think we took their words with great weightiness and seriousness. I think their plan is somewhat comparatively. Their plan is a little bit rudimentary, but their experience carries great weight. So, like I said earlier, there's a lot of different arguments that can be made about phasing, about redevelopment, about costs. But for all of these parties to come together in a line item basis and say, that's in, that's out, that's in, that's out, that's in, that's out, that hasn't happened. So you have people painting in very broad strokes on one side, and then you have consultant teams that are spending thousands of hours debating the merits of various plans and trying to be as thoughtful as possible. I have a hard time believing that's an apples to apples comparison. It sounds really nice, but I don't believe they have 4,000 or 5,000 hours into the planning like the various consultant teams do.
Why does the city council not want to let citizens vote on this issue in the next election?
It's quite possible that we do at this point, because we have, if we stay there and we pay for it, we're going to have to go for a bond election or to go for a tax rate increase. Both will require votes in November, right, Jack? When's the tax rate one?
So the tax rate one would not be in November. It would depend upon state law related to the general fund tax rate,
Okay.
which we've never, ever done. So we would have to explore that with the city attorneys on how to do that.
We'd have to figure that one out. I mean, I think the interesting, if you're really gaming this out on how this would work, when DISD did a bond 2 bonds ago, I believe it was in a November general election time, and several of their really good propositions failed. But then they did the more recent bond. It was in an off cycle of the November election, and everything passed with flying colors. So I think it's the timing is going to be really, really important. If we end up doing a November even year election, would be really hard for us to get a tax rate and possibly even a bond through. I mean, this is the kind of things you got to think about if we're going to set this. So the timing would be really important. I'm getting wonky on this, but I think it very much so would be an issue that go to voters. Was this your question, or?
No, but I have a question.
Well, we're going to go through the cards and then.
We're going to keep going because we're short on time. Jack, another tax question. As a municipal government entity, does the city have to pay taxes even if it leases?
The city does not pay property tax, no.
Okay. Okay, let me just go through these one more time. We've got a lot of repeats, and I apologize, guys, if I didn't get to all of them, but we got there quite a few. I guess once more, and we kind of mentioned this at the beginning, but could you speak a little bit just about what City Hall alternatives would look like, whether that would be a building that's already potentially owned by the city, or what you would want to see prioritized as far as like accessibility goes, or what it would look like for Dallas's government to take on a new building?
The proposals presented to us by CBRE so far have been office towers that are in the central business district or really close adjacent to it. And I mean, generally, as Peter mentioned earlier, we put out, city manager put out requirements on what we were looking for, which included a public plaza for protests and demonstrations and things like that. That's very important to all of us on council and to our constituents. As Peter mentioned, access to food and other things that we don't have right now, which is hurting retention of our employees at the city. Were there any other easy requirements to throw out there?
I mean, certainly ADA, accessibility, transit access, clear parking, in the sense that it's not 7 blocks away, but we've been charged with delivering solutions to a host of issues, including all of those transit and amenity level ones. So it's going to look different. It's unequivocally, it's going to look different than what you all have today. There's no way around that. But if I'm putting my city council member hat on, I would feel like I need to know what all the options are before I make an informed decision. So how do you make a commitment of this magnitude to one if you don't know what you're saying no to? So before you say yes to something, you have to say no to all the other options. So I don't see a way around not exploring the market and not doing the due diligence for you all to make an informed decision or for city council members to make an informed decision. So the goal is to get to apples. That's been the charge given to us. That's what we've been presenting. Obviously a little bit hamstrung by the need for confidentiality. Everybody wants to know what are the options, what are the solutions. You do have to trust your city manager and city council members to be very deliberate in the process. We've been moving very methodically to try to get answers, and we've gotten feedback along the way in executive session. And we've been listening to the public comments and trying to be thoughtful about those as well. But the market is the market. And what we do know is that new construction is 3-4x the price of existing assets. So if we're having a budget constraint on one, I think it's pretty fair to say new construction is not an option within the city's current financial picture. It's kind of coming down to this: how do we say yes to something if we don't know what we're saying no to? And conversely, maybe we should say yes to something else if it's more compelling than what we think we need to do. So they're just trying to collect the information.
And Peter, just briefly, because we're butting up on time, but what is the market, right? How would you describe the market right now for a sale or leaseback transaction?
I'll just quote our friend, Mr. Buffett: you buy low and you sell high. The exits in the CBD have created a generational opportunity. So if you are considering this is the penultimate moment. This is the best time in the history of Dallas to be considering this because of how much distress is in the market. So whether you like it or not, this is great timing because AT&T's leaving, Comerica's left, where's leaving. The buildings are 50, 60, 70% vacant in cases. So it's the best opportunity in, I think, all of Dallas's history to acquire assets like this. You can look at the comps for what buildings have traded at and where they're assessed. Go look at the assessed values on the tax rolls of the major towers in the CBD, and you'll see they're at 5 cents, 10 cents of reconstruction value. That's a 90% off sale versus new construction pricing. I think that's pretty interesting and compelling. That's just from the assessed value. And then you look at the assessed values of the towers uptown, and they're 5x that. So there's a very, very clear disconnect between the CBD and the Arts District and uptown, and that creates a generational opportunity for the city. So I think that's very interesting and worthy of exploration. You could always say no to all those things, but if somebody's having a 90% off sale, I'd kind of want to know about it as a taxpayer to say, we might want to consider that. So that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it, but the opportunities are very material.
Okay, and our last question tonight is just for the council member. What is the key takeaway that you want residents to walk away from tonight with?
Thank you, whoever asked that question. That this is a complicated decision. This isn't a just yes or no, black or white issue. It's not. It's been very hard for all of us to make this. I mean, it's and we're not done yet. And so my, I guess, request to anybody who wants to dig into the numbers would be to pull up the briefing that was posted last night, take a look at it. If you have questions, if you are skeptical, send it to me. I get 100 of the form petition emails every day, and I've read them and I know what they say, but I get maybe one a week from someone who has read it and has a thoughtful suggestion or who's giving me questions to ask that are helpful in representing you and digging into these numbers. And I know it's complicated. We all have lives and jobs and families and everything else. But if you have the time the next 24 hours to do that, that would be my request to you. We have a tough budget season coming in the fall. Whatever happens with this vote, there's still going to be, I mean, if we stay in City Hall or if we leave, there's still going to be very tough decisions to be made on the city's budget. And if you are passionate about libraries or parks or what have you, public safety, you need to get engaged, because there will be a move by staff, because they don't have a choice, to cut some of these items. And we're going to need to hear from you to advocate to try to keep those in the budget. So that's my request. I'm going to stick around afterwards to take some questions from folks who weren't able to ask them. I'm not sure if these guys are able to, but I do want to give them a round of applause for coming tonight, if you could join me. Thank you. And Emma.
Call the question. Call the question, council member. Call the question. Straw poll, as you said you would do. before everybody left.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Brett.
Go on.
So, how many in the room are in support of staying in fixing City Hall? No, whatever the cost, because the building's that important. Okay. All right. How many folks are in support of moving out and redeveloping the site? All right. Who's not sure? Got a few folks. Okay. Well, thank you for that. That's
Does that
helpful.
kind of mirror what you're seeing at City Hall?
It mirrors the people that are coming to City Hall, and it mirrors the emails that we've been getting. Thank you. You guys have a good night.